President Trump will address the UN General Assembly tomorrow while still trying to broker a peace deal to end the war in Gaza. But just before the assembly, the UK, Australia, and Canada have all formally recognized a Palestinian state, defying the White House and delivering a blow to America's strongest Middle East ally. Heritage Foundation Senior Research Fellow Eugene Kontorovich joins me now to break all of this down. Eugene, good morning. It is great to see you. Let's get to the UN General Assembly first. The president is going to be making a speech. The UN, obviously, one of the most progressive bodies there is out there. So what sort of reception do you think the president will receive?
I think the UN is going to be polite and even deferential to the president, because the president understands that the UN is a broken institution running primarily on US dollars that supports every kind of woke idea and fantasy in the world while not giving America its money's worth. So they want to basically pretend that they're going to think about reform, they're going to think about doing better, and try to stonewall for 3 years and hope a different administration will be less critical.
Okay.
But, they think President Trump is stupid. They're going to find out he's not.
Okay, well, now we got to get to Palestinian statehood, because I just said it. Britain, Australia, Canada, and Portugal, by the way, all now saying that they're going to recognize a state of Palestine. What does this actually mean in practice?
In practice, the biggest implication, it doesn't mean there is a Palestinian state. Indeed, when you look at what they say in their recognition, they say, we really think there should be a Palestinian state, so we're going to recognize one so that it can then exist. Now, believing in fairies does not conjure them into being. It doesn't make them real, no more so than believing in a Palestinian state. But what it really does accomplish is blowing up the hostage negotiations that President Trump invested so much of his political capital in. He really started his term from the beginning saying we have to end the war in Gaza, and invested so much time and energy in bringing Hamas to the bargaining table. Now, France and Britain say to Hamas, we got your back. You don't have to negotiate at all. You don't have to release any hostages, and we're going to recognize a Palestinian state, something you've not been able to accomplish in decades. And it teaches separatist groups around the world, and it teaches the Palestinians, if you want to score diplomatic wins, murder, rape, and maim civilians. And of course, it totally blows up President Trump's...
Eugene, to that point, Keir Starmer said this solution is not a reward for Hamas because it means Hamas can have no future, no role in government, no role in security. Well, someone needs to tell Hamas that, because a senior leader in Hamas said Mr. Starmer's announcement is a step in the right direction, even if it came too late. So obviously, statehood, a recognition of Palestinian state, is a reward for October 7th. But these nations don't seem to have squared that circle. Right now, there is a ground offensive taking place in Gaza. So what should the plan be for the region once this war is over?
So I think President Trump has articulated some of the main elements. Hamas needs to be eradicated from Gaza, but you cannot put Gaza under the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, because the Palestinian Authority is what resulted in Hamas in the first place. You need Israeli military security presence, keeping that area secure, and you need to let people leave. Those people are prisoners. Half the people in Gaza have already, before the war, said they want to leave, or close to half. So we need to let those people leave. And now, to counter the damage caused to any potential diplomatic process by the French and British effort, the president needs to fight fire with fire and recognize Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, where already hundreds of thousands of Jews live.
Understood.
This is the holy land, this is the biblical land, and President Trump needs to say, we're going to do the opposite of what France and the UK are doing.
Just a few scheduling notes for viewers out there. President Trump also expected to meet with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky later this week in New York City on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. There's also going to be a big meeting today on a Russia jet incursion into Estonia. So a lot going on the foreign policy front. Eugene Kontorovich, thank you so much for helping us break it all down. We appreciate you.
French President Emmanuel Macron opened his week at the United Nations General Assembly with a dramatic announcement that France will formally recognize a Palestinian state, seeking to reset the diplomatic agenda on Gaza and signal France's role on the world stage. As world leaders gather in New York for UNGA, Macron is seizing on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to stake out global leadership, and critics argue, to position himself as a counterweight to President Donald Trump. Renewing his call for recognition of a Palestinian state, Macron has also put forward a proposal for a multinational force to take over from the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, the day after the Gaza war, according to the Times of Israel. For Macron, the United Nations General Assembly is a stage to project France as an alternative power, Macron's policy on the Israel-Palestine conflict reflects his broader ambitions on France's foreign policy. That is, the idea that the country, as a middle European power, can offer an alternative to the US-China competition. Jean-Louis Saman, a senior research fellow at the National University of Singapore's Middle East Institute, told Fox News Digital. In this specific case, Macron believes that his push for a Palestinian state will increase French credibility in the Arab world and the so-called global South. We have to recognize the legitimate right of Palestinian people to have a state, Macron said in an interview broadcast Thursday on Israel's Channel 12. If you don't give a political perspective, in fact, you just put them in the hands of those who are just proposing a security approach, an aggressive approach. He went further, denouncing Israel's ground offensive in Gaza City as absolutely unacceptable and a huge mistake. The comments infuriated both Israel and the United States, which argue that recognition emboldens extremists and rewards Hamas, the group responsible for the October 7, 2023 massacre. Macron, however, insists recognition is the only way forward, reviving the long-stalled two-state solution. More than 145 countries already recognize Palestine, and European allies, including the UK, Canada, Australia, Portugal, Malta, Belgium, and Luxembourg, are expected to follow France's lead in the coming days. Yet analysts warn Macron's track record suggests otherwise. If you want to know how UN-sponsored peacekeepers do with terrorist groups in the region, we have a 20-year case study in UNIFIL, which enabled, rather than denied Hezbollah the ability to grow into a massive military threat, Richard Goldberg, senior advisor at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, told Fox News. Macron is certainly driven by his beleaguered domestic political situation and the large French Muslim population. But in his own mind, he's also been down this road in Lebanon, where France has historic equities. The record is pretty clear. Macron has never delivered on anything. Security improvements have only come through U.S. pressure and Israeli military might, Goldberg said. Just days before Macron's push, Trump met with former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and Jared Kushner to discuss Gaza's future, and is set to hold a meeting tomorrow with Arab leaders on the day after, sources confirmed to Fox News Digital. The overlap has fueled speculation that Macron is maneuvering to outshine Trump and claim the mantle of statesman-in-chief. Goldberg added bluntly, "He may perceive himself that way, but I don't think many in Washington spend a lot of time thinking about him." Anne Bayevsky, director of the Turo Institute on Human Rights and the Holocaust, called Macron's maneuvering a blatant power grab. She told Fox News Digital, "The fact is that would-be Emperor Macron has no clothes." The promise he is waving around of Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas's promise to soon hold elections and abandon dictatorship and terror screams scam. At home, foreign policy topics are not driving the current political troubles, which are primarily focused on France's need to reduce its fiscal deficit, Saman noted. "I think Macron's initiative on Palestine has more to do with his personal aspirations in terms of legacy. He'll leave office in 2027. The proposed Gaza force, modeled on UNIFIL in Lebanon, where France has long played a role, would demand French resources and likely face opposition in parliament from both the far left and far right, and without U.S. endorsement, Israeli buy-in, or domestic consensus in France, the initiative could stall before it begins."